Yes, today we're looking at silly laws, and every country has them. And believe it or not, so does the UK. What's the craziest law that you know of? Well, our Canon correspondent, Nada Issa, spoke to a few of you to see what you had to say.
Silly laws, funny laws, completely ludicrous laws. We've come in front of Parliament to interview the public and see what they have to say about the most ridiculous laws in place in the UK.
Well, I've got to say university top-up fees, probably. I mean, paying for your own education, whoever thought of that one?
Haven't come across any silly or funny laws in Britain.
My view of the law was it was a big arse, to be honest with you. Having 30 years in the police force, I thought there were some silly laws.
I think there's plenty of silly laws in Britain, but I must admit, as always, when you're in these things, it's hard to recall it in the moment. But I believe there's lots of bylaws around all over the country where it just doesn't make any sense for to be in place anymore, dating back to like the Middle Ages and stuff like that.
In the US, you can't speak to a police officer whilst smoking a cigarette. It's against the law, apparently. And in Singapore, you can't buy chewing gum anywhere. It's against the law to sell it, I think. We couldn't find it anyway, so I'm pretty sure it's against the law to buy and sell.
It's quite a few. In fact, we deal with them every day because I work in the House of Lords and we have some strange laws. What you can and what you can't do, which is either throughout the United Kingdom and also some in Scotland, together with local laws in London. What you can do, there's some interesting ones.
Well, I'm joined in the studio by the author of a very interesting little book by the name of The Strange Laws of Old England. His name is Nigel Cawthon. He's joining me today. Thank you very much for joining us. What possessed you to write this book?
A publisher offered me a large sum of money. Basically, I'm a professional writer, so I do what publishers say.
And how many books have you written?
112.
112?
Yes.
But this seems to be quite a popular little book, doesn't it?
It is. It sells very well at Christmas, that people seem to buy it, not to read it, but to give it to a favourite uncle or something as a Christmas present.
And do people like to kind of show off their knowledge once they've read it?
I haven't really noticed that, but I have been told by a barrister that she has seen a judge with a copy on the bench. So I guess lawyers use it for light reading.
What on earth would he have that for? Hopefully not to refer.
Well, maybe, because there are so many laws in this country, because the law has been established here for such a long time that you couldn't possibly read them all. So maybe that they're just the judge is just amusing himself and refreshing his memory on something.
Between judgments.
Yes.
Tell us about your kind of memories when you were writing the book. What kind of how much research went into it? Was it exciting? Was it fun? Was it kind of a bit? Did it get boring at sometimes? We had to read all the statutes and.
It was always pretty much fun. I live just down the road from the British Library, which is the biggest library in the world, and they have all the statutes there and a lot of other law books which I could refer to. I got quite lucky because you obviously couldn't read through all the laws and then pick out the ones you thought were amusing. Often because they're in such arcane English, if they are in English at all, because some laws were in Latin and earlier ones were in Norman French. But even the ones in English are almost impossible to unravel.
Well, that's the thing. They always say they write the laws so that the public can't understand them. Is that true?
I think that's pretty much true. Yes. I mean, it keeps lawyers in business. If we could all understand,
then we wouldn't need lawyers.
No.
And I mean. You've mentioned you've got a whole range of subjects here. You've got from economic laws and dietary laws, curious cases. What's almost the nuttiest law that you've come across, or that's in this book?
The nuttiest law. I'm very particularly fond. I know one. There was a court case that went on from Tudor times for several hundred years, and a man had committed suicide. He was a nobleman, and committing suicide is a felony. So not only your punishment's not only, obviously in this case, not death, because the guy's already dead, but he would be attainted, which means his money and his titles couldn't be passed on to his children.
So the children are affected effectively by his kind of crime?
Yeah. Now the question that went to court was he dead when he committed suicide? Because if he was already dead when he committed the offence, then he wasn't attainted at the time, so that the money and the titles could be passed on. But if he committed suicide before he was dead, then it would be. And this, for hundreds of years, they debated this, and I'm not sure they ever came to any satisfactory conclusion on it.
Well, it seems that a lot of the cases are debated on just, you know, a one word or one phrase or terminology and how they have to define that. I mean, you hear cases sometimes in the US, or even the Jaffa Cake case, which was quite an obvious case there. It was an important case because it had obviously big consequences.
Yes.
But it's amazing because I heard that they brought an actual cake-sized Jaffa Cake just to prove that actually it is a cake, not a biscuit. But anyway, well, there are 3 laws that we're going to look at in particular now with the public. Number 1, these are these statements. Number 1, it's illegal to place a postage stamp with the Queen's head upside down on a letter. Number 2, a pregnant woman has the right to relieve herself, even into a policeman's helmet. And number 3, it is against the law to burp on a bus within 3 miles of Buckingham Palace. So 1, 2, or 3. Only one of these laws apparently is false. Which one? We asked the public.
The first one.
The last one.
I think it'll have to be the urinating one.
Urinating?
I think it's the third one.
I think the last one's incorrect.
The burping one.
The burping one.
Only one of them's incorrect. The pregnant lady one.
I would say the one about the pregnant woman peeing in a policeman's helmet's incorrect.
Yeah, me too. Second one.
Second one.
I think it's the pregnant woman one.
Yeah, I would say so too.
I would say a pregnant lady urinating. I can't believe she wanted to urinate in my helmet. I wouldn't let her.
Ooh, I'm tempted here, but I think I'd have to go for the one that's incorrect would be the relieving yourself in the policeman's helmet. I think I can understand the law saying you can relieve yourself anywhere, but I think the policeman's helmet would be a bit out of order.
I suspect the stamp one. I suspect. I would like to see the policeman or you enforcing the second one, let alone the third one. I think if it could be a law if you behaved in an unpleasant manner. I think they'd catch you on something else. But perhaps I'll leave it to you about the second one.
Well, it seems many people are interested there about the second one. So, Nigel, number 1, the postage stamp. Number 2, the pregnant lady being able to relieve herself in a policeman's helmet. Number 3, burping on a London bus. Which one is false and which ones are correct?
Well, I'd never heard of the burping on a bus one. I looked into the postage stamp thing and can find no record of that being illegal, although I was told by my parents when I was a kid not to do that. And why would anyone frame a law saying it was illegal to where you could pee, whether to pee in a policeman's helmet on? I can't imagine that could be framed.
Maybe it's because we wanted to take care of pregnant women, and I mean, we have to get up, don't we? I mean, it's almost, I guess that's not a law, but it's kind of policy to it.
Yes,
if I'm sitting on the train and I see a pregnant lady, I'll probably get up. Although I might get in trouble for assuming that someone's pregnant but actually not pregnant. So I wouldn't necessarily know. If I was a policeman, would I actually allow that to happen? So you don't believe those then?
I don't, because I mean, obviously a policeman wouldn't want people peeing in their helmets, but I can't imagine that Parliament passed a statute about it.
What about the early one about the Scotsman? You can, I think, shoot an armed Scotsman.
In York, again, there's not much of a record on that. However, in Chester, they boast about the fact that you're allowed to shoot a Welshman after dark in Wales.
Obviously, we don't recommend that, but there's a law there. There's a kind of a recommendation.
Again, you can never tell whether these laws that were a law one time, whether at some point it's been repealed. It's very difficult to find out whether laws have been repealed.
Well, that's the other thing as well. I mean, I guess a lot of the kind of laws here, maybe they have been repealed or they haven't. So what's the case of that? Why do these laws still exist today then?
Largely because it's a mammoth job to go through all the statute books and repeal inappropriate laws. because many laws will have been modified by later acts of Parliament. So to unscramble them and undo the knots. They do have a committee sitting trying to do this, but it's really an impossible task.
And it's expensive.
Yeah.
But how difficult can it be? I mean, essentially, how would you modify a law that is ridiculous? You either need it or you don't, I guess.
Well, I mean, the real thing is that these sort of laws are redundant because no one ever goes to court about these matters, and if they did, they would be laughed out of court. The justice system works in a way kind of independent of statute.
I also remember a law, it might have been from the 19th century, where you can't beat your rug in the street, because I see it would make sense. I mean, if we read the law like that, I think, well, that's nonsense, but it would make sense because all the houses were fairly compact and they're close together, so I guess it'd be seen as a public nuisance.
Yes.
What about laws that are not necessarily ridiculous or slightly balmy, but laws that come out recently and there's a big public debate about them? What's your perception of UK law and the way it's going? Or a lot of people talking about the nanny state and how we're trying to be overprotective about our citizens.
I find it rather strange that the mechanics of the law. In fact, I very rarely, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't often go to court, but I went to court this week, actually to an immigration tribunal. A young lady friend of mine from Namibia came over here to study, to be a dental nurse, and doing what they call a sandwich course. So she just does a year at college, then a year in dentistry herself, actually working for my dentist, part of the National Health Service, and then another year back at college. While she's been away from college, the Home Office have decided that it's a bogus college that are giving certificates so people can dodge the immigration laws. As soon as she heard about that, she got in touch with the Home Office. They asked what to do. They said, book yourself in another college. Then she gets a deportation order.
Unbelievable.
So she went to court, won the case, because it's ridiculous. The Home Office appealed on the grounds that she's not allowed to appeal in this country. She's supposed to go back to Namibia. They're not saying that the court got the judgment wrong, but she was supposed to have done it by telelink from Namibia, and then she could come back, which is...
And they obviously stuck to that, because that's the rules, so you have to stick to that.
So well, it was debatable whether that was the rule or not, because there have been several cases about this thing. And this will probably go to the House of Lords, the barristers told us. It'll just go on, by which time she's finished her course and will have gone back to Namibia anyway.
Well, many people are affected by these. I mean, these silly laws, maybe the old ones or new ones, they are still in place. But let's see what you think should be done about the old silly laws of England.
When they fight very hard and waste our money, our taxpayers' money in the Parliament to come up with these silly laws, I don't like that.
I think if people started enforcing them, then they make a difference. But as nobody really bothers, it's fine. And I'd probably quite a lot of money to take them off the books.
Nowadays, I don't think anyone takes them too seriously. It's not like you're going to be followed up for putting the Queen's stamp upside down.
I mean, I think they're great because I think that they're quirky and they definitely differentiate cultures from each other. But it gives you something to laugh about, just like in terms of humanity and people in general. And
complete and utter waste of time. Some go back to the 17th, I think, and 18th centuries, and I think really they need to be looked at and just taken off the statute.
To be honest, I think they're quite funny. It's quite good to have them involved, and everyone sort of knows them. So sort of different countries have different laws, so it's quite nice for like tourists and things. So yeah.
I don't think they have any effect whatsoever. People don't know about them. Many of them have been repealed, and I think some of them are just for fun.
I mean, I don't see the point of keeping them actually, because a thing like that it would probably never happen, because say the pregnant lady wanted to relieve herself, she would set off earlier to get where she had to go, or she'd be a bit more discreet about it, I think. But
being discreet about it. Another law that you have in the book is the one about the mince pies, and we had that in our initial video there as well. What's the story behind that?
That's not really true. What had happened was when the Puritans took over in this country, when we had briefly had a republic, they decided that it would be a good idea for people to fast on a Friday. And a few years into the Republican period, Christmas fell on a Friday, so people were deprived of their normal Christmas dinner, including, I don't think that mince pies, well, they did have mince pies at the time, but it wasn't the sweet ones we have now. They actually
meat.
Had meat in them, so they didn't have meet because it was a Friday.
How does this affect the public's perception? I mean, I believe that this book has been read by everyone around the world almost. You've made it quite a good selling in other countries, I believe.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I'm surprised actually. In Australia, I think that they've got it, but we haven't sold it to America, which is rather odd because they have the same common law that we have. In fact, they often cite cases in this country in court in America.
Because it seems that, I went to this quite well-known large bookstore actually recently. And I was looking, they had a section with commercial property law and immigration law and European, really serious things. And then they had this next to it. It's just right there, as a good reference.
Yeah.
Which I guess is quite good for you in a way.
Absolutely.
It just increases your sales.
Yeah.
A final point, if we have time, I wanted to raise was, there's quite a few laws here that would seem ridiculous today, but it's only because of the context in which it was written. Like obviously, in England was quite a religious country at some point. Tell us a few laws about when Britain was supposedly a religious or fairly Christian country.
One of the ones you mentioned on your introduction about not wearing armour in Parliament sounds ridiculous now, but of course when people did wear armour because they were fighting out, it was rather important not to allow people turning up at Parliament with weapons and in suits of armour.
But was that a religious concept though, or was that just
no? That
protective reasons?
That was a civil constraint. But things that interest me particularly are basic freedoms. That for example, that the great Magna Carta, which is the basis of individual freedom in this country and in America and all common law countries, there were 63 clauses in it, and it says this is the law in England for all time. Can you imagine how many clauses are still in force?
How many?
3. All the rest, the other 60.
That's short-sightedness in a way.
Yeah. And everybody thinks that habeas corpus, our law of habeas corpus, comes from that. It isn't. In fact, the law of habeas corpus hasn't properly been passed. What happened was, directly after our very religious period in this country, when we had the Christian Republic, the Puritan Republic here, and the King returned, lots of people had lots of parties because they wanted, the theatres were open again, people could drink, and there was a lady who lived not far from me in Holborn who was famous for her parties. One night a constable came around and told her to be quiet, and she abused the constable and she was arrested and disappeared into jail. And people missed her parties, so petitioned to get her out. When she appeared in court eventually, she said that she'd not only been beaten in prison, but she was pregnant. And this caused such a furore, they took to Parliament this habeas corpus bill. It passed through the House of Commons easily, but it couldn't get through the House of Lords. And what happened when it was reintroduced in the House of Lords? One of the tellers for the vote, as a joke, a very fat lord came in and counted him down as 3 people. And it passed on this joke.
Well, so there's power of the people there, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, the winner of our prize for last week's show is Stuart Daly from Peterborough in the UK. So congratulations to you, Stuart. Let's see what this week's question is with Nada Issa.
Thank you, Matthew. I hope our winner enjoys his gift, and if you would like to receive one of our Canon gifts, then email us on canon@presstv.co.uk and let us know of the most ridiculous law you have heard of.
Yeah, keep those emails coming. Nigel, what's your future now? You're working on a book at the moment?
Yes, I'm writing a book about modern-day pirates, and which is due on Tuesday. I'm then doing a book that your viewers will be interested in. I have a new suspect of who Jack the Ripper is, and I have his confession.
Oh, well, that could be interesting. I'm afraid that is all we have time for. It is the end of the show. Thank you to my guest, Nigel Cawthorne, author of The Strange Laws of Old England. And thank you for watching Canon. See you next week.